Good evening. Good evening. I know what you all are thinking. It is not Wednesday night. What is she doing on here? But this show is going to be so special that I wanted to go ahead and go live with you all tonight. And then we are going to make sure for those of you who wait for it on Wednesday, you will see it again on Wednesday night as well. I am your girl, Lakisha McGaney-Osei, host of the Joy is Just Over Yonder podcast. And I have a very special guest with me this evening. I told you all we have to move a little differently this year, and I want to make sure that we are also bringing the male perspective onto Wrapped in Wellness conversations because we know they have a lot to contribute to the conversation. So tonight we have very special guest, Mr. Seeymore Bell, with us, and he is going to be coming on, and we are doing a special edition. You all know that February is not only my birthday month, but you know that February is the month of love. We are on the eve of the Valentine's Day, whether you celebrate it or not. This is just a time that people love to express their love, their concern for those in their life. So we want to bring a special LoveWell edition to you all because that's what all the shows are focusing on this month, the LoveWell. Sometimes we talk about eat well, move well, our mental well, healing well, being well. But tonight we focus on love well, which we know can encompass some of the others. So we are going to be talking with a phenomenal poet. He is a veteran of the Navy. He has been around the world. Um, and he is also, the Motor City. He is a
Detroit,
raised
Motown.
in Motown, the city of Detroit, Michigan. So he's a Midwestern. I spent some time in Minnesota, 11 years in the Midwest myself. So familiar. He was raised by his grandparents, but he does currently reside here in the Maryland area, which he arrived in 1999 after serving in Japan for a few years. So poetry and music are a big part of his life. He participates in open mics. He has stretched that poetry into putting it to music. So he has singles that he has dropped, and we're going to be talking about some of those this evening. And so what you also need to know, why he is such an important part of the conversation, of the wellness conversation, is that when he served in the Navy, he was also part of Navy medicine. And so his current work is in the medical field, and he works with mental health. And so he is going to be a phenomenal resource to you all. So not just on the poetic side, but on the wellness side through that. So he is the author and the so do you consider he's still a poet, but once you put it in music, he's a spoken word artist, and so he has released 3 singles: Real Men, Kiss You, and the newly released single Reminiscing. So we're going to talk about those tonight. And Real Men, which I love. I love that single. I play it all the time to remind me there is hope out there, that there is still real men. But he was nominated for a DC Wammie Award for that single. So I voted. I hope you guys voted. He aims to share inspiring and uplifting messages through his hip hop music and poetry. And he is going to be our guest tonight as we talk about the love well and the art of the apology and how important it is. And so, Mr. Bell, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate you having me on. your podcast, and hey, looking forward to the conversation. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. And you're making history. You're making Black history. You're making just Joy is Just Over Yonder history because you are my first male guest.
Oh my
My first
goodness.
official male guest. I have
Oh,
people tune in and jump on, but I'm realizing that you are actually the first male guest of our
oh,
podcast since we
the,
started.
the pressure of it all.
So you got to represent well,
Oh
represent
man.
well.
All
And I
right.
know you will. So we're gonna jump right in. We are again we're focusing on the love well. And there's a lot that encompasses that. You know, we talk about relationships in general, it may be platonic relationships, romantic relationships, how we love through those relationships, how we decide to when things aren't quite going right, how do we reconvene, how do we make sure that we do not lose, important relationships because of the lack of not being able to apologize or, make sure that we bring that relationship back together. So before we even go there, tell us a little bit more about yourself on the medical side and what you do in the mental health arena.
So in mental health, actually, so I worked on a program for the Marine Corps, some just resiliency, and there's a program called Oscar, and I can't remember what the acronym for Oscar is right now, but those are programs that we put together for veterans coming back from combat experiences to help them reintegrate into not
Mm,
their families, because when that dynamic, when you leave for a while and then you return, and in many veterans cases, they may do so with arm babies, and by the time they get back,
mm,
that arm baby doesn't even know who they are.
right.
So that's the kind of, when you talk about reconnecting with the family and reintegrating with them, you've been gone for a while, so how do you come back after being away for a while and not just, and it's a double fold dynamic because you now left your unit that you were with and everybody was motivated and doing what they
Mhm.
had to do. So, and then you come home and you're kind of home alone, if you would, because they have a routine that they had while you were away, and you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I fit in? I'm no longer out there, and how do
Right.
we bring that all together? So it's there's a lot to it, and so that's just some of the work. I coach a lot with executive medicine. There are these competencies for hospital organizations, everything from like managing personnel to facilities management to um, bio ethics and stuff like that. So I also coach folks who are tracking for, say, for instance, becoming a private sector hospital or a DoD hospital. So
Okay.
coaching leadership. Yeah.
Awesome. So there's a lot of good work being done. And we were talking before we went live here, and I'm realizing when you said that, it makes me think back when I was young. My dad was in the army. He served 22 years.
Okay.
So, and I remember the times, even though it would be short stints most of the time when they go to the field, come back, but the way you put that is like each time he comes back, it is like you have to
Yeah.
re-establish yourself in your own home. He went
Right.
away for Korea. I remember for a year we were still in Fayetteville, North Carolina that year while he was in Korea, and it was a big readjustment
Oh yeah.
coming
Yeah.
back. And so and that's when they were just doing a year. And I know even now, is a whole nother generation of military brats who, their fathers and mothers are doing multiple stints, in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. So they experienced it even at a deeper level than we did at the time. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
that reconnection with your own family and feeling like a stranger probably sometimes in your own home.
Yeah, because that
Um,
didn't even move into, the traumatic brain injury and some of the other things
mm,
associated with being in those type of austere environments. But I mean,
right.
you hit the nail on the head with it is, and that happens, unfortunately, if an individual is incarcerated and they've
Mhm.
lived that isolated life to an extent and come home. So and unfortunately, we have, well, fortunately, we have organizations, I should say, to help people transition
Right.
back into society. But whether it be military, that type of stuff, or separation for whatever reason. Sometimes there's an anxiety associated with it, and there's a
Mhm.
reconnecting and recoupling that takes place that sometimes can be a little challenging to navigate, depending upon how long you were gone and how the family dynamics have changed.
Right. So the reconnection and recoupling. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, when you return from being gone for a while, and like I said earlier, the kids, like, I know one time my youngest son, when I left, he was not even 2 yet. So by the time I
Mhm.
got back, and so he really didn't know me. So I had to kind of slowly, I know I'm his father, and with
Mhm.
that comes a lot of emotions, because you're thinking, you're excited as you're coming back home from wherever a long
Right.
separation is. And then you come and you find that he doesn't even like recognize you. So you got to start
Mhm.
like reacquainting yourself, playing peekaboo, you know, doing whatever you have to do to really get back and let that in my case, son, know that safety is there. The Yes, I am your father, and so that whole and then the recoupling and the first date. I can't even say. I remember, this is kind of funny, but I remember my wife. She said something to me jokingly after a long time away, and I replied, "No, I was away so long that when I hugged you upon return, let's just say, it's hard. Let me keep it rated PG, but
Hey,
let's
we all grown here. Long as you don't get us kicked off YouTube and Facebook.
like it was kind of like, oh, the first time happened when I hugged you, because I've been gone for months.
Right.
So she was like, what, at first kind of taken back, and she know I'm crazy, so we laughed it
Right.
off. But yeah, I mean, the whole recoupling emotionally, um,
Hmm. And that
physically,
intimacy that's been missing
intimacy,
all that
who does the
time.
finances, because sometimes when you separate, if I was better at finances, all of a sudden she had to become better at it, and
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. So there's an instant shift when someone leaves for whatever reason,
Mm.
be it abandonment, be it unfortunately a prison sentence or a tour of duty. All of them
Mhm.
come with their set of challenges when it comes back to like recoupling and reconnecting and reestablishing intimacy.
Right. And when you're doing that, we're going through that process of reconnecting, coupling, kind of just regaining your normalcy, but not normalcy because, depending on what you experienced while you were away, you're never going to be the way you were before you left because you both
Right,
have experienced life away from each other and you've experienced things, especially if it is, talk about a soldier, on the battlefield and so forth, that is going to change your mindset, how you think about things, how you receive things, even maybe even how you touch. You may come back and you're wanting the intimacy, but just the way that someone touches or strokes you reminds you of something in the battlefield and you're unable to reciprocate like you
right.
were able to in the past. And
Mhm.
so there's definitely a lot that's going to be going on. That love well has been disturbed in a way. And so it's going to take work to get it back together. Um,
Right, yeah, that would love well, or I
mhm,
know we used to refer to it as love tank, and then there were sometimes when you stepping on my air hose, or you literally
mm,
cutting. So all types of terms, and then
right.
you were speaking to like hypervigilance and some of the things that folks endure when they've been away for a long period of time and experience probably, maybe traumatic type situations. So there's certainly that hypervigilance where you're hypersensitive to various things, and you
Mhm,
have to kind of recenter yourself and realize you're not in an environment that's either traumatic or dangerous in the military, but you're actually at in a safe place. And it's so funny. Later on, there's going to be a song called "Safe Is," and it literally begins with, "I put a piece of me in the metaphorical safe, so I could be
mhm,
mentally and emotionally safe. Finishing
mhm,
what was tough and at the same time great, or maybe it's like hell and I realized it late." So it's like a whole little thing about different situations that we experience when we're away, and when we come back to feeling safe, whether it's a traumatic emotional experience or incarceration or military service.
okay. So let's shift that some. What because we're talking relationships. So this is for those of you who are just joining us. Make sure I'll be checking on Facebook too. If you have a question for Mr. Seymour or a comment, I'll check on your comments down. Hey, Corey, we got Corey Jenkins tuning in. You're starting over to rebuild that relationship. Growth are some of the comments that he's made here. So yeah, there is when you we've kind of talked come from the military background because we both have experienced that, but just as we shifted just in any relationship and you're shifting to rebuild, whatever has happened, relationships goes through things. There's ups and downs. There's different things that impact how you decide to mend and maintain those relationships.
Mhm.
And you have your new single that you talked about, Reminiscing, talks about, how to kind of reconciliation and the importance of that apology. But how do we, we have the whole thing, men, which one is it? We from Mars or y'all from Mars?
I know men are from Mars, men are from Venus. I know we both on opposite
We
planets.
on opposite planes. So, you might think you apologizing, but I didn't hear the words, or you think, or I might do an act that I feel like is showing you that I'm apologetic, and you're like, but you ain't say it to me. So yeah, there's
Hmm.
always that, that discipline of learning each other's love languages
Right,
and
right.
so forth. So when it comes to love languages, what's your love language?
I want to say acts of service,
Mm,
which yeah, kind of acts of service. Um, I definitely touches right in there,
mhm,
and kind of go in order. I think all of us like words of affirmation as well. So I would
mhm,
say acts of service when people are selfless, or that really, like, just, I think it's a good thing. But so
mhm,
I would say acts of service for me, and
mhm,
then like I know the Mrs. is words of affirmation, so
mhm.
it's kind of fun to try to come up with different ways to still turn the light on, that says, hey, I'm affirming you, and
Right.
I trust you, I believe in you, I appreciate you, and all the things that fall into that words of affirmation.
Well, she living with a poet, so the words probably just be coming off and flowing. So is it easy for you to give those words of affirmation, just as a poet, as a lover of words, and constantly, even in your work and in your creation process,
Mhm.
being able to provide her with that?
I would say over the years, it would be interesting to have here. I would say over the years I have improved because I think when you're abandoned by a primary parent, let me just put it like that, it
Mhm.
sets up a set of circumstances where you might deflect more. Or so it took a while for me to put that ego and pride aside. And I don't think any man ever fully gets to where it's a done deal grappling with. I think it's one of our secret wars. They talk about men's secret wars, and
Mm.
unfortunately, how we fight them by ourselves because we are conditioned to believe that we're in this war by our own selves and don't ask for help. And that's a whole couple of books, Men's Secret Wars and Women Who Live with Their Men While They Fight Secret Wars by Patrick and Marcia Means.
Okay.
So, there's a whole lot behind being able to be intimate, being able to be transparent, and being able to meet that need unselfishly. Because when you have stuff, it can get in the way. And until you start to remove some of the clutter from your own life and see that person, you know, um, when they talk about separateness in the sense of yes, we're together, but you have a life, have a life, and when we come together, that makes it, interesting. So yeah, it's a whole foundation thing to it,
Good.
but yeah, yeah,
Interesting. So, and you mentioned separateness, how we kind of operate in our own silos, but yet you're a unit. So you have to, come together. But you also do need some of that separateness, to kind of maintain, your person, your own identity as
right,
well. So it's still a good thing, but you have to know how to compromise when it comes to, you
right.
know, building a relationship and being together. I but that the power in your statement, men fighting their own wars
Hmm.
and constantly fighting their own wars. There was a Facebook video, I think I saw like a week or two ago, and it was men sitting on the floor, kind of having a session. And all of a sudden, I think it was where they were doing the activity to just kind of allow themselves to release their emotion. And then
Hmm.
one gentleman was there sitting on the floor and just broke down, started screaming, and another one embraced him as he was screaming and letting go. And so that's one example. And then today, I think it was this morning, I saw this video all of a sudden where there's the black man challenge to frolic. Just be,
Just
just
be, yeah,
frolic.
and
Just
have
just
and have fun.
be and let go and have fun. And when I tell you, that brought me so much joy watching all these short clips of black men just running in the grass, falling in the grass,
Mhm.
just being, because in this day and age that we're in now, is like you always in a state of being intense almost,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you always
always
have
on.
to be
Yeah,
on guard,
yeah,
for the most mundane things that you shouldn't have to be on guard for. You happen to be on guard. So to see all those men, come together, make that collective video of just frolicking and just being. And I was just in my mind, I was like, how amazing would it be if their sons are right there seeing them just be able to release and frolic
yeah.
and be happy. So as a black man who, may or may not be having your own wars and stuff, how important is it to you for us, for, your significant others, the women in your lives, whether it's mothers, sisters, cousins, to really, realize how much you just want to be sometimes. Like you just sometimes you don't want to have to be on guard. What can we do and how can we um, receive that or open that up?
Wow. Well, you said I went deep. That's a deep question because
Mhm.
individual responsibility comes in, and then yes, sure. in a relationship, there's some support and some deep discussions and conversations that take place that, really get into that play on words of intimacy, which is
Mm.
into me see. I'm
Mm.
allowing you to see the deepest things in me, and vice versa. So there has to be, the different, when I think about it, we have been through so much. We actually separated for a whole year. But
Mm.
what we learned from it was, one, that sometimes when you jump out of something, like, I don't know how heavily, let's just say, I quickly realized that relationships go in these cycles.
Mm.
And if you jump out one into another just because you're ticked in the moment, eventually that honeymoon is going to end, and you're going to come back around to, why didn't I just stay and get through this and grow through this, and
Grow and work
put
on it.
aside the pride and put aside the ego, and if it's deep seated anger. Because what I realized about myself early on is, when you have, in particular, a father leave, you take one or two paths, and those two paths are either anger, hurt, and I'll never amount to anything, or I'm going to go out and I'm going to achieve and become this people pleasing person. So, taking it back to your original question,
Mm.
it does take, when you take into mind all of those different things. There's the work life, the home life, who pays the bills, all that kind of stuff. So it definitely takes a special bond and a lot of communication to keep that close knitness there, in a way where you are in a cycle of supporting one another rather than in a cycle of tearing each other down.
Mm.
It does take work. If I could just say this one last thing on that question, there, another book we read together was called Love and Respect, and it talks about the crazy cycle, and it talks about how there are women who, men, we feel like we would die for you, but
Mm.
depending upon how we communicate it, you may not think we like you at all. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
because communication in a love language versus intellectualizing, two totally different things. So
Right.
when someone says I feel, it took me a minute to just sit there and entreat the feelings, and allow them to express themselves, because of course instantly we want to analyze and fix it so we can move on to the next task.
Right.
That's just how, we talk to men and Mars and Venus, and how
Mm-hmm.
we're wired differently. There's all kind of analogies out there that explain the differences, but then there's the how do we coexist. And
Right. How do we coexist? How do we bring it together? Because we have to, you have to, like, we say all those things, but at the same time, there's just part of me that say that, we can understand each other. We can. But all those premises make you believe that, like, we're never going to be able to operate in unison, but we
yeah,
can. We can. It may be different, one might compartmentalize while the other doesn't. And that when you said, you know,
well,
we
yeah,
we
yeah,
we would die for you, but it's like, dude, I don't even think you even like me as a person because of the way you. It's
yeah,
like it's so many mixed messages. And for
right,
me, just to say, Jimmy, like, I was married. I was married. I'm divorced. I did not date for a long time or anything after being, because I went through a long separation before actually being divorced. But even through the long separation, I wasn't dating. So
hmm
you're talking like a decade of just, I wasn't intermingling. So only in the last few years, like 2.5 years, have I been actively dating other
okay.
people. And so it's been interesting. It's been interesting, but
Yeah, that
the
year I was
biggest
out there was interesting, boy, because people, that's when I learned those terms, like, you sent your representative, didn't you? Like the
right.
first 6 months, you got to get to the real person to see
You
if
get
you
to the real
supposed to
person,
be
and
your representative. So
Lord, I said, y'all told me, but I said, y'all ain't tell me.
right, right,
So, but it's just, but the biggest, no matter what you go through, and that's the part of the good thing about it, you get to know yourself more through that
mhm,
process. You get to learn, what you will and will not tolerate, what you're okay with, what you can work with. You
mhm,
learn a lot about yourself. So I appreciate the journey, because it's me at I'll be 50 this week versus me in my mid 20s when I first got married and was in a relationship for a long time. And so, it's like a 25-year difference of how things happen and
right,
relearning that and so forth. But communication is so key. And just being able to, even just basic communication,
right, right.
even,
And that's so
I don't think
complicated.
I'm any longer interested. Okay, let's have that conversation. We're adults. Like, I don't get the
Okay,
whole
frankly,
ghosting
okay,
thing and
yeah,
stuff. I just
yeah,
don't. Because I'm just like, if we're all adults, we can communicate to each other. It's not, you're not locked and loaded to anybody.
right.
So it's okay to have those conversations. But it really hit me when you said we willing to die for you, and we like, do you even like me? Because it's like, the messages are so mixed at sometimes.
Because see, we're out there doing things. When they talk
Mhm.
about the difference between functional trust and
Mhm.
relational trust, functional, we can hit the nail on the head because you're talking about paying the bills. You're talking about the stuff that we typically list when we're cornered. I do this,
Mhm.
this, this, this. The
Right.
stuff. So like there that's that functional piece, and many of us are very trustworthy with completing tasks and stuff like that. But then the relational trust is like, okay, are you really into who I am? Do you hear me? Do I hear you? And some of the stuff that I used to think was the mushy stuff, but if it's gonna go the distance, if it's gonna last, it
Right.
is those exact things that matter. And you mentioned something about compartmentalization. Man,
Mhm.
you talk Venus and Mars. And
Yeah.
so I did read a lot. I was in a situation where I was driving miles, so I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and
Okay.
one was called Men Are Like Waffles and Women Are Like Spaghetti.
Yes.
Yeah, you seen that one? So, and it's so
Yes.
funny how, when we communicate, like the spaghetti, you can't see where one string stops and the other one starts.
Right.
Whereas we move from, okay, I'm done here, next compartment, next compartment. So
Right.
it's so many different analogies out there that explains the difficulty, and it really is the moving towards being able to coexist in a healthy, loving relationship. So lots of good
Awesome.
stuff. You're bringing up good stuff too.
Yeah. So, and that's why, so we have to have these conversations more and more. So that's why I love that Wrapped in Wellness 4.0. Yes, I'm gonna keep plugging it. Wrapped in Wellness 4.0 is really going to focus on, because I'm like, we do everything else together, we can get well together too. So
Mhm.
it really is going to be about bringing men and women together, in that safe space. There may be sessions that are geared towards more towards men or more towards women, but the idea of that weekend, that 3-day experience that will be happening February 16th through the 18th,
Oh,
2024, is going to be that we have the men join the conversation. We have men in the room this year that were greatly impacted by everything that was going on. And the first thing one of them said to me, he came and whispered in my ear, he said, when are you going to do this for the men? I was like, it was open to any and everybody. It's just that the women are who showed up, but it
yeah.
was definitely open to everybody. And so that's why I really want to make sure, that there are men in the front of the room speaking. And I already have the visualization of the stage, and it's some barbershop chairs up there, just to be
Okay.
like you in the barbershop scene. And so you can really feel like you in a safe place and you can have those conversations. So when we talk about the relationship, the compartmentalizing, the separatedness, and so things have gone on, and now we're talking about, I want to bring up your song, your single "Reminiscing," and how that song came about and the premise behind it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So reminiscing kind of came about with me kind of going over some things personally for myself, because
Mm-hmm.
we as poets or writers or whatever kind, we normally hear the message first because it's in us. And sometimes we're not even clear on which direction or what's saying. We just know that it's there. So reminiscing, and apologizing and understanding the difference between the formal and informal apologies for, the formal for deep grievances and the
Mm-hmm.
informal for the not so deep grievances, and understanding the difference. And so as I roll the because this whole project is about wellness, as you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I roll out reminiscing, there will be discussions sometimes about the difference between the formal and informal apology, the difference between forgiveness, which frees the heart and mind, and then, as I was sharing with you earlier, the restoration of trust, which normally
Mm-hmm.
comes through changed behavior over time. So
Right.
there's a whole apology, and now how do I trust that what you said to me is going to unfold and happen? So that's where the changed behavior over time. And sometimes it takes life coaches or counselors or a deep, deep, deep seated love or all the above to get there. So reminiscing, when I list off a few things that when I think it opens up, let's see, I want to fly you away to a faraway land. No plans, holding hands, taking walks in the sand. So no plans, no pressures, no demands. Under the moonlight, the stars, we will dance. We just gonna get out there, talk, dance, because I know I was chasing wealth. I left you by yourself. I'm acting a little stealth with the ugly hand you was dealt, but now I'm back to checking on you and how you really felt while I was away, or why, so it really is about the reminiscing, thinking about sometimes what we did ourselves, and then the words to the songs just kind of flowed in and everything. So, and there's this one part where I do say, beautiful skies or something like that, and I apologize, and it kind of comes to this stop that other people said to me, even though I didn't plan it that way. It just came that way, but because it's very apparent, the
Mm-hmm.
pause when I say I apologize. And then I'll close with this. Then I say something like, sometimes an apology doesn't even mean we're wrong. And that's where ego and pride come in, because
That
some
part.
yeah, sometimes an apology is just to get past a bump. I can mean you can mean what you say and apologize for hurting a person with how you said it. And
Right.
as the situation softens, then you got a better ground for coming back together. So that's reminiscing is a little bit of all that when I was thinking about it, and as I kind of share words or stories of how it came together. Those are some of the ones that I'll share. So yeah,
So you said the restoration. There was
like
a
restoration of trust. So
restoration of trust.
yeah, like
How do we get there?
yeah, like
What
I said,
what what are some steps that you were very transparent and talked about being separated for a year, so that was a process.
mm-hmm.
You're back together. How many years have you all been married?
Whew, see if I go there, I'm gonna show my age.
Go ahead. The people that we need
A
encouragement. There's some of us out here that need encouragement. So please share.
long time. We met in high school. I
Oh,
joined the Navy.
okay.
She went to college, and then we married young and everything. So we married in our 20s, and let's just say This project is the second hip hop project I done. I was younger when I did the first one. So I wanted the difference between that young guy that wrote
Mm.
those songs and this guy now. So let's see, about 40 some years. When you count high school and everything, let's
Yeah.
just say we're definitely up in the 30.
Yeah. So you're talking from experience. Like
I am. I am.
you ain't fresh behind the ears with this.
No,
Like you all
no.
have put in some time.
Right.
So, and we often hear is like, Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it? And just love itself is not enough. Like it
Oh
takes
no,
work.
no. It
It
does.
takes
It
work.
does. Because
So,
you love her.
we hear
Yeah.
love is not enough. So what are
Mhm.
some of the other things that you definitely must have going for you to make it
For
work?
us, I gotta say, faith at the
Mm,
top of the list. There's an aspect of us knowing that if we did come up on a hard time, one of us would go. We would break away from our ego and pride, and one of us would go pray about it. One of us would,
mm,
be the bigger person and announce, "I'm walking away from this right now."
right.
So, how do you do that? And then set a time that you're going to come back and discuss it. And then there's the art of discussion, really learning to sit and listen, not to respond. And the stuff, and some of this, don't think, like I said, we're real men. And this project, it does not mean that I have fully arrived at a destination. It's something that was just, when you do have some of the experience, if you can help other people traverse those same waters, I think you do that. So that's one. Faith. We always say that, and not giving up on one another, because we knew each other's um, true hearts, in a sense. When you talk about someone who was abandoned by their father and a codependent, initially it was the perfect recipe. I
Mm,
needed, he needed, and she was in a more needy situation. So you bring that together. It was when one day, when you have that, you will just say, "Oh, I'm gonna check with you on this. I'm gonna check with you on this," and you get yes, yes, yes sometimes in a
right.
codependent relationship. So you check, and then all of a sudden it was like no, and I kept moving. I was like, "Did she say no?"
Mm.
You know, uh, let me
I'm like, wait a
go.
minute now.
So people finding their voice is a real thing.
Yeah.
Finding, you hear it a lot, but you oftentimes don't hear the traumatic situations that silence them. And then they go into relationships like we did. And you have to work through your individual stuff to become a better version of who you are. And thankfully, during that time, she's doing the same thing. And so,
Mm,
get a call. Hey, I know it's close to being done because it was formal and everything was formal. Would like to come back, bring y'all back together, because I think there's some hope here based on some things that you've been doing. So I went to the session and we started the whole reconciliation process. And I do remember even saying, how soon do we want to come back under one roof? Because you get, so it is a process, and the whole
mm,
apologies and everything that take place as you're um, working your way back together, because that takes work too. But I will say that I'm glad the work was done. I was happy to see
mm,
her defeat that for her life, because I got to see her grow. And then I got to see she was in my shadow for so long, willingly, until that no came. That
mm.
fortunately she did say to me, "I did recognize how you treated me in general, which was kind," and so on and so forth.
Right.
So, you know, and we were best friends in high school, and then it kind of evolved. So we had a history that sometimes was there. And then lastly, my grandparents. I saw them 46 years of marriage until my grandmother passed away. and granddad would embarrass us sometime with the way he kissed grandma at the end. He come home, and I was like, "Get a room," and he was like, "The lease or the deed is in my name because we owned by then." And he was like, "The lease is in my name, so you get a room or
Right.
move out." But
This is my house.
she never opened the door to a car, to a building. He always opened it. He
Mm.
and just so if anything, for a man with a sixth grade education, I always say to people, to me, he had a PhD in peopleology because much of who I was as a leader in the service and much of the lessons that I learned came from that looking at that relationship. She paid the bills because he only had a sixth grade education.
Mm.
So and they worked it and it worked. And I'm like, so why with more education, more technology, what's happening? What's with the pride and the ego and the things that's separating us, not only as couples, but as just people in general with offenses and stuff like that. So I'm gonna cut it there.
Okay. I love it.
Pass it
Love
on.
it. Faith, trust, having an example to
Yeah.
model yourself after, very important. And I know we're getting close to our hour here, but at that last point, having witness and having someone to model after
Hmm.
is huge. And
Yeah.
we see that, unfortunately for a lot of our young men, that model is not there.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but at some point, we talked earlier about, at some point you take individual responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. You do.
You have, is about truly taking and making the decision that my life is going to be different, my life is going to be better. I know right from wrong, um, so that I can, learn to build. But and I know by any means it's not always easy, but we really do have to take responsibility, at some point for our own actions and how we treat each other and interact with each other. Is so important. So
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. And now Reminiscence has dropped.
Yes, it has.
We mentioned Real Men a few times tonight. And I love Real Men because of it's like, to me, it should be like the anthem, not of just black men, but just men in general. It should be
Thank
like the men's anthem. And when I heard the words from that, they're just all so powerful. Um, when you, because do you have sons?
do. I do.
Yes.
That was definitely an incentive to get myself
Mhm.
together. I did not want to
Yes.
put on to them. And let's just say, I caught it, but that was a very big motivating factor too, because let's just say one time we were in Detroit and my oldest son made a beeline for the person that I was told was my father. And I'll never forget it because he's pretty mild mannered. And he said, I want to see the person that created the person that you were before you became the person you are. For him and he was relatively young, but he wanted to see the person who I allowed, and see that's where
Mhm.
ownership comes in, because at
Right.
some point I have to break away from what he did, what he said, what he didn't do, what he didn't say, and deal with who I am to become that better person. And they were major factors in that, because I did not want to go from him to me to them. So
Right.
definitely big.
Right. So yeah, I asked that question like if you had sons specifically because that model that you are so proud to have from your grandfather, have now modeled that to your sons. And then they now will have the ability and they have the resources and they have the example in their own home to model then to their children and their families. So it is a legacy of greatness. All legacies aren't about leaving $1 million or estate,
Yeah.
but that legacy of how to love, how to lean into who you are and be able to build relationships through the trust, through faith, and so forth. They've now modeled and received that from you. So kudos to you for, you know, doing the work, for both of you, doing the work to get it done. We know that doesn't always work out like that, and you have to do what brings you peace. But it's amazing, to hear, the stories of those who we're gonna make this work, and it is. It's about compromising and taking that spaghetti and putting it in them compartmentalized waffles.
Yeah. One
And
day, I don't
you
know.
gotta it ain't always chicken and waffles. Sometimes it's some spaghetti and waffles that you just gotta
You
work
got that
out.
right, boy. Got that right.
You just gotta work it out. So we thank you so much for doing that. I have dropped below you all ways that you can stay in touch with Mr. Seeymore Bell. If you want to leave us with final words, a poem, a haiku, whatever, you can do so. Let us know where we can see you next if you're performing. And then of course, like I said, his Instagram, his Twitter, all of his contacts, social media is below. You can follow his YouTube channel so that you can know whenever he drops a new single. We thank all of you who joined in and was checking in live. This will be again released on Wednesday as well, so you got the early viewing of it. We just wanted to go live so you can have time to chime in. But we're gonna set this to play Wednesday. As we started to record it, it hit me that this may be some information that somebody might need before what they consider the big day tomorrow. So we wanted to drop it a little early. So just in case you've been trying to figure out, should I apologize? Yes, you should. And tonight, well, you don't even have to wait till tomorrow. You can do it tonight. How about
Oh
that?
yeah,
You
tonight.
don't need to wait till tomorrow
Tomorrow's
because
not promised.
tomorrow is not promised to us. Believe you me. So we thank you so much. But yes, if you have any final thoughts on continuing to love well and the art of apologizing, we'll give you those final words.
Hey, well, thank you. So one thing my grandfather used to say, and this is in the area of offenses, apologies, and so on and so forth. Sometimes we have to shut things out and get in that quiet place, in that quiet space. So he used to say something, and it sounded kind of harsh at first, and then he expounded. He said to never let insignificant people create significant events in your life.
Mm.
He said, now, people are important. They're the plan A, but unfortunately, people disappoint us, people offend us, and that's just running rampant now. So easily offended, and cancellations and all of this kind of stuff. But to safeguard your own self, to safeguard your relationship, sometimes you have to take people that are acting insignificant and actually, put them in that place to where it doesn't impact your mental health and some of the things that we're talking about. Because when it's all said and done and all that kind of stuff, it's you and whoever you treated well at the end is going to be there. So that's it.
That's awesome. Don't let insignificant people
Create
create
significant events.
significance.
Because when you think about it, people try to
Yes,
provoke us all the time.
they
And
do.
so we give them a level of significance that they haven't even earned. And they can just
Mm.
say something, and the next thing you know, then they're pointing at us for our hostility, pointing at us for our such and such. So if we learn to do it that way, you kind of, people are going to call you conceited, people are going to call you such and such, but one thing they won't do is call your phone. So You know?
That's in
But
this day and age. Yeah, that's why. This is why I keep telling people communication is so important, and it has
right.
become a lost art. And I'm talking in all relationships and how you resolve things. Like
Mhm.
these darn text messaging is not.
Oh gosh,
You
yeah.
cannot rely on. Look, we're gonna start a whole nother show if we get into this.
I
You
know
can
we could.
you cannot rely on text messages
I don't like the tone
because
of that
no
text. What
matter
you
what
say?
your intent might be, sending it through, they're
Yeah,
gonna hear the voice they want to hear it in. And
absolutely.
it will take the conversation to a whole different level. And you got people that don't speak today because they thought the text message meant what it didn't mean.
Absolutely. So true. So true.
But
So
they won't pick up the phone and have a conversation with you.
right, right. And yeah,
Like there's
people
like this fear of actually speaking directly and verbalizing that we got to figure out why is such a fear of that.
yeah. That
Why
is a
why did that
whole
why that
that's a
fear
whole
has
yeah,
crept up because we used to talk all the time because you ain't have no choice. But
right.
now is there's this fear of actually vocalizing and exchanging with each other.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but it exists.
Well, let me say this real quick. Thank
Mhm.
you for having me on. Thank
Yeah,
you. Don't take it for granted. I appreciate it. Um, this project came together. I just a few shout outs, if I could, to Eli Hart,
absolutely.
Alex, yeah, Alex Seawall, Matthew Shell, Eric Fredrickson, and a whole host of people that have helped this come together. That's another thing. When you just show gratitude sincerely, I think it does just I think it's a mutual exchange because, you
Yes.
know, I wouldn't be here. This project would not be without those individuals. This is not a me thing. It's a we thing. So I appreciate you bringing me on. I appreciate those individuals and shout out to my fam. So thank
Yes.
you so
And
much.
I appreciate you taking the time. We talked about it a couple weeks ago and made it happen. And I look forward to doing a lot more with you on the poetry side and with the wellness and the medical side because that's definitely something that we can definitely look forward to having. So we're connected. We're connected and we'll stay connected. So shout out to King. That's how I got introduced to you through
Hey,
the
yes,
King and I
yes,
podcast. So I'll give a shout out to
absolutely.
him
Shout out
as
to them.
well.
You got a
And
birthday coming up on the
yes,
28th.
all the birthdays. Yep, his is mine is on the 16th. I think his is on the 28th. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, we got a lot of birthdays floating around in the month of February. So you
Yeah.
all, this was my special gift to you all. I wanted to make sure that we had a great show this week for you. So it really would have aired live on Wednesday, live stream Wednesday, but we brought it to you early on Monday before I head to Jamaica.
Oh
And
my goodness.
I'll be thinking about y'all.
No, you
Um,
won't.
but we wanted to give you a special Love Well edition. So again, we thank you, Mr. Seeymore Bell, for joining us. We look forward to connecting with you again. So you all check him out. He has his email. You can book him for the poetry, but do you do specific speaking for both, right?
So I do. I do. I've
Yes.
done that more in DOD, but I'm willing to do that. If it's helpful to other
Yeah.
individuals, I'm certainly willing to do that. I have before, but more so it's been a part of the occupation. But yeah, I'll be glad to share.
Yes, absolutely. I'm telling you, there's a lot of space out there for you that needs you. So we'll definitely be talking.
Hey, thanks.
All right.
Thanks. I appreciate
So
it.
we are going to go ahead and um, tell you all and wish you all a wonderful week. Again, this is your girl Lakisha McGaney-Osei. I'm grateful for how far this has come. The Well Wrapped in Wellness Wednesdays started out about 3 years ago. This is season 5, episode 10 that you are seeing tonight. And we are still going to be in the process of getting those transcribed over so that they are audio and actually on the podcast platform. And so that's where you see the renaming and rebranding of Joy is Just Over Yonder, the podcast. And so that's where you will be able to look for us on those forums. So we just thank you all for who joined in this evening, who gave some feedback. Thanks, Corey Jenkins, representing all Brett area reunion, for tuning in. And for those of you who will tune in on Wednesday, we say hello to you. Again, follow Mr. Seeymore Bell at his social media handles that you see below. And get ready to get Wrapped in Wellness 4.0, February 16th through the 18th, 2024. There will be a early bird registration link where you can at least go ahead and reserve your seat. Those who reserve their seats early with the non-refundable deposit will save big on the registration for the weekend, so you don't want to miss that. And lastly, I know that you all are awaiting the haiku Churilology. That is coming out. The goal is to get it out by my birthday. I am confident that we will have it out this week. Yes, even as I head to Jamaica, Haiku Blues and Haiku Lovejoy will actually be a dual book. So it'll be a 2-for-1 that you will be able to get. And that will be full of solely haikus that have been written by, yes, me, Lakisha McGaney-Osei. So Haiku Blues and Haiku Lovejoy coming out this week. Peace and blessings. Thanks for tuning in.